Hi everyone, it's Gary Nicholson here for the Mountain Weather Information Service. This is your planning outlook video updated on Friday the 16th of March. Now it's bitterly cold again over the next few days as easterly winds are back in the picture. Essentially dry conditions for a few days as we go into next week with high pressure in charge, temperatures lifting just slowly, but then milder conditions for a few days in the second half of the week with some rain coming in from the Atlantic, but the overall trends into the final part of March look still chilly and fairly unsettled as well. Let's have a look at temperatures, and this is the 850 millibar chart. Now, if you're new to these videos, that's a constant height, a standard height that we use in forecasting. It's around 4,500 to 5,000 feet. The height that we get to 850 millibars varies depending on general temperature and pressure, but it gives the useful steer for the temperatures on the highest Scottish summits. You can see how much colder air is sweeping in from the east. This is through into the early hours of Saturday, so through Saturday daytime at that level in the atmosphere, you're seeing values around -12 to -13. Higher Scottish summits may see temperatures around -8, -9. I think at this stage that height level is just above the Scottish mountains, so it might not be quite as cold as these numbers do suggest. Widely though, below freezing from low levels up, bitterly cold with severe wind chill in exposure, and that will be the story right the way through this weekend. Now temperatures do just warm through slowly, relatively, as we go through into early next week, just coming up a degree or so every day, with just cutting off that more east or northeasterly wind early in the week, things just revolving around an area of high pressure. And eventually things turn around more to the Atlantic in the middle part of the week, and we'll see a rise in freezing level. Initially 600 to 800 metres, but through I think Wednesday into Thursday we could eventually see temperatures lift above freezing even on the highest summits, as we do see a brief push of southwesterlies. I think it is a temporary feature though, because by the time we head towards next weekend, freezing levels coming back down, I think down to 800, 1,000 metres, maybe even a bit lower depending on the exact pressure pattern and wind direction. I think more or less those cool conditions, sub-zero on the Scottish Munros and higher tops in England and Wales, that'll be the theme into the final week of March. So again, pretty cold conditions will continue as we head towards the end of the month. I look at the synoptic charts, and this is for this Saturday. There's the easterly wind that's coming in. High pressure is towards Scandinavia. Local convergence zones coming in over the North Sea will feed into the Peak District and Pennines, where there could be some more organised snowfalls, particularly Saturday afternoon and evening. Otherwise, for most places, it's just flurries, and many western mountains seeing little, if anything. But widespread gales across most hills and mountains will just give that severe wind chill factor. A little change in that story through into Sunday. High pressure just shuffles itself a bit more towards northern Scotland, the bitter easterly gale force wind across many mountains, although from around the central Scottish Highlands northwards, winds are comparatively lighter nearer to the centre of that high. Some snow flurries around, mostly just snow blowing around in the wind and not a great deal actually falling. Essentially a dry story into Monday, high pressure moving toward the west of Scotland. The wind flow is north or northeasterly, strongest across the Pennines and Wales. May well be quite light winds across much of Scotland, but terrain widely frozen, hard frost in the valleys and the glens overnight. Scottish Highlands, some glens down -5 or much lower, quite probably. Temperatures then lifting a little bit by day, so you'll see freezing levels lift 4 to around 600 metres into the afternoon. A widespread frost again overnight into Tuesday, then temperatures lifting slowly once again, freezing levels climbing to around 600 or perhaps 700 metres by day. We'll see essentially dry conditions, maybe just one or two brief snow flurries locally, but I'd fancy most places will be dry with variable amounts of cloud. It may well be that the West Highlands start to become a bit more cloudy just as the wind flow turns more westerly, but light winds essentially looking likely for most places. Could just be a stronger northeasterly still in place across the mountains of mid and south Wales. Now, tricky with timing, but by the middle part of the week, it looks as though fronts will be moving in from the Atlantic as high pressure slips further southwards. So that's introducing the milder air then. For the first time in a while, actually, the wind coming in as more of a direct westerly, and within that, relatively milder conditions coming in with those fronts. So freezing levels rising, we might see some snow on the leading edge of the fronts, but essentially I think coming in as rain up to fairly high levels for a time in the middle part of the week. Western Scotland at first, drizzly conditions may come in to western hills elsewhere with time, and lowering cloud too. So if we take a step back and look at the big picture in midweek, and you can see the fetch of the air that's coming in from the southwest, a tropical maritime air mass for the first time in a good while. So there's the milder conditions coming in just for a spell. We'll see low pressure though, which originates around the south of Greenland, moving towards us later in the week, and that draws in a polar maritime air mass, hence the drop in freezing level as we head towards the weekend. And cool and unsettled conditions look believable through next weekend and probably beyond as low pressure takes charge across the British Isles. Areas of showers moving around slowly. Freezing levels, as we mentioned at the start, maybe back down below 800 metres, so some snow accumulating again on higher areas, occasionally falling maybe to some lower slopes, and higher terrain essentially staying sub-zero for a few more days ahead then, after that brief thaw in the middle of this week. A little bit tricky just how things pan out in that week leading up to Easter. These are the general trends, and there's the area of low pressure that tries to go southwards, even towards the Mediterranean. But we're being fed by areas of low pressure that may keep coming around from the North Atlantic, with cold air from northern Canada and Greenland getting into the mix. Essentially, the jet stream is still going to run well to the south of where it might be on average, so we're staying on the colder side of the jet stream, with cooler conditions coming around from the North Atlantic. And almost something of a cyclonic block, we would call it, where just low pressure could become slow moving or keeps being fed into by similar areas of low pressure, so it doesn't change conditions a great deal over a few days altogether. So cool and rather unsettled or mixed is likely to be the theme in the run-up to Easter. So a little bit of snow loss for a time in the middle part of the upcoming week, but the overall trends should maintain the extensive snowpack heading towards that Easter period. We'll update you on the very latest in the next planning video issued on Tuesday. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.